Hi, welcome to Tefo, his-tory channel. My name is Catharina Magrietha Kruger and I will tell you the story behind the his-tory of Mr. Jan van Riebeeck or Jan Anthoniszoon van Riebeeck. Usually I will tell you, grab yourself a cup of coffee, sit back and let's start his-torying around. But not this time. My dear his-tory lovers, Jan van Riebeeck is quite a difficult character to talk about. This is the second part. Please watch the first video on Jan van Riebeeck before you get to this one. But this time, rather grab yourself a glass of wine. Let's start his-torying around. Now, history lovers, we ended the first video of Jan van Riebeeck where he got chosen to become the first commander of the Cape of Good Hope. On the 25th of December 1651, Jan van Riebeeck departed on his journey back to the most southern point of Africa, together with 82 men, 8 women, of whom his wife Maria de la Qualerie was one woman, and his son Lambertus also went with him. They departed on the Dromedaris ship. Now, the men that Jan chose to actually work for him or sail with him down to the Cape, they were not really skilled laborers, nor were they great sailors. They were men that couldn't find jobs in the Netherlands. You see, at that stage in the 1600s, there were not a lot of jobs, and everybody thought, okay, if I work for the VOC or Dutch East Indian Company, at least I will earn a salary. So they were all on board of 3 ships. It was the Reiger, the Tiger, and the Dromedar. No. The Tiger is not really a ship. It was the Reiger, the Dromedaris, and the Goede Hoop. They all departed together to the south coast of Africa. The Olifant and the Walvis ships, they departed round about 3 days after the other 3 ships. Reason being, they were big cargo ships and they were carrying a load of building material down to the Cape of Good Hope. For you see, this building material was actually going to be used to build a big fortress for the Dutch East Indian Company. Jan van Riebeeck was instructed by the Dutch East Indian Company not to colonize Africa. No. He was instructed to build a fortress, supply the Dutch passing ships with fresh water, to grow vegetables, to supply the ships. He was also instructed to put up a flagpole to direct the ships into the harbor of Table Bay. He was also instructed to build a relationship with the local Khoi people or the Khoina people and to barter for fresh meat or let's say with animals which were cows or sheep. On the 5th of April 1652, the Reiger, the Tiger, the Reiger, the Dromedaris and the Goede Hoop entered Table Bay. Oh my goodness, and Maria saw this big Table Mountain and she said, oh Jan, wat mooi, oh de schone Kaap, de lucht is zo blauw. Maar Jan, ik ben een beetje bang. She said, oh Jan, how beautiful is the Cape, the Table Mountain, the blue skies. But Jan, I'm a little bit afraid. Jan said, ach Maria, Jan maak 'n plan. Wij wonen hier maar voor 5 jaartjes, dan gaan wij terug naar Indië. Jan said, Maria, I will make a plan. Don't worry, we will only stay here for 5 years and then we go back to our beloved India. On the 6th of April, according to Jan van Riebeeck's diary, he had sent Adam Hulsler and it was Arend Lefren. He had sent them ashore to just have a look out and just to make sure that no other ships was in the bay. They left at first light and they nearly stayed out the whole day. Old Jan van Riebeeck was so frantic, he was wondering what the heck happened to these guys. But luckily they returned late afternoon with the good news. It was all safe. There were no other ships in the bay. On the 7th of April, the Reiger had also dropped its anchor in Table Bay. And then everybody went ashore, and Jan van Riebeeck, according to his diary, had a Thanksgiving service. Then he had sent 6 men to go and search for the Dutch post stone. Now that was a stone where all the Dutch passing ships would leave letters underneath the stone. They also had to go and search for Leonard Jansen. Remember this guy? He was the guy that stayed here in the Cape of Good Hope for nearly a year and survived. And that was why Jan van Riebeeck was sent down to the Cape. They had to go and search for his fortress, Fortress Sandenburg. The men returned very quickly with lettuce and wild almonds to eat, as well as fish. One of the sailors even passed away because he ate some of the wild almonds, and if you don't cook the wild almonds, they are poisonous, but they didn't know it. Jan van Riebeeck then went further ashore, and he was looking for the best area to build the fort. Then this fort had to be close to fresh water, it had to be close to the ocean, and there must be suitable soil to plant vegetables in. So he had found the best spot underneath Table Mountain. And even today, in the middle of Adderley Street, you would, if you use your imagination, that is the area where the first fort was built. This fort Jan van Riebeeck had named Fort Duinehoop. Duinehoop, duin is a sand dune. So this fortress was built out of mud, timber, and clay, and it had 4 corners. The Dutch also traded with the local Khoi people and the San people. And the Khoi and the San was so happy to have them there. They didn't mind that this Dutch people would take their land. Yeah, right. That is what we were taught in school, you see, many moons ago. But let's look at the other side of the story, or out of the Khoi and the San's perspective. Now, before I get to the story of Jan van Riebeeck meeting up with the Tutu or Khoi people, I firstly want to tell you who were the Khoi or the Tutu and the San or the Sanqua people of South Africa. They were the first inhabitants of South Africa, the people who lived here first, many years before any European had set foot on land in South Africa. They were already living here. Now, they said that Cape Town's name was actually Tutuhuap, which means place where the clouds gather. Now, if you look towards Cape Town and you see Table Mountain, you can easily imagine why they gave Cape Town the name of Tutuhuap, because warm moisture would blow against the backdrop of Table Mountain and it forms huge clouds, the tablecloth of Table Mountain. And that is why they said it was the place where the clouds gather. So the Tutu or the Khoi people, they were cattle herders, and Tutu is the name that they actually gave themselves. That means men of men. When the Dutch arrived, they actually said, well, it sounds like you guys are saying Hottentot, 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 Hottentot. That is this how it sounded when the Khoi people or the Kukuming people were talking. It made a lot of clicking sounds, and the Dutch thought Hottentot, that is how it sounded. So they named them Hottentot. Today, please don't use that term for these people. They are the Khoi or the Tutu people. Now, who was the San people or the Sanqua people? Physically, they didn't differ from the Khoi or the Tutu people. It was just in their occupation, what they did, that sort of divided these two groups of people. The Sanqua or the San people were all hunter-gatherers, where your Kuku or your Khoi people were cattle herdists. The San were given the name, or the San-Kwa, by the Kuku people, which means men without cattle. So when the Dutchies were, once again, when they saw the San or the San-Kwa for the first time, they saw them living in the bushes. And so they called them Bossiesmannetjes, Bushmen. Please, once again, today we don't use the term Bushman. We would rather say San-Kwa or San people. Now, when Jan van Riebeeck arrived here with his men, this was the green pastures of the Khoi people and the San people. So long before Jan van Riebeeck and his men could set foot on land here in Cape Town on 6 April 1652, the Dutch, the French, the Portuguese and the English, they all traded already with the Khoi people. Usually they traded beads, tobacco, alcohol and some metal objects for cattle, sheep, ivory and ostrich shells, ostrich shells. Even the Portuguese were trading cattle for guns. But the Dutch said, that's a little bit stupid. Why do you want to trade with guns? Maybe the Khoi people would use the guns against the Dutch. That would be stupid to trade with that. Now here in Cape Town, there were different clans of the Kuku people. It was the Gorihaikwa, Gorihaikona, and Gorichokwa people who lived here in this vicinity. They all moved in and out of the area. It all depended on grazing ground or fields of grass, which comes with the seasonal rain down in Cape Town. Now, remember, when Jan van Riebeeck and his men had set foot on land, they immediately started building the fortress because that was their instructions. They had built it in front of Table Mountain, and while building it, suddenly, Anthoniszoon, the chief of the Gorihaikwa people, arrived with some cattle to barter with them. Now, Anthoniszoon was given the nickname by Jan van Riebeeck as Harry die Strandloper or Harry the Beachcomber. Now, you would ask, how did they trade and how did they understand each other? You must also know that Harry die Strandloper or Anthoniszoon was sent to Bantam by the Europeans to learn English and Dutch way before Jan van Riebeeck arrived here in the Cape. So Harry die Strandloper or the Beachcomber could actually speak Dutch and English, and he could easily act as the interpreter between his people and the Dutch or the English passing ships. He arrived at the building site of the fortress and he was ready to barter. Now, Jan van Riebeeck, when they arrived here, they saw, okay, nobody is living in and around Cape Town area or let's say in front of Table Mountain. So we would see this as no man's land, niemands land. It is there for the taking. Harry or Anthoniszoon thought, like previous Europeans, these Europeans or Dutchmen would just stay here for a while and then probably they will leave again. Surprise, surprise. They had built the fortress there without asking. Now, can you imagine the Kuku people, the Khoi people, going in their ship all the way to Holland or the Netherlands and start building a fortress on a piece of land that had nobody on it and said, well, nobody was on this land, so we are taking it over. Hello? That is weird. That is so weird. But that was the sort of the mentality of the Europeans in those years. And remember, the VOC was a very strong company and they ruled the trading route. Each evening, old Jan van Riebeeck was lucky enough to go home to his wife, to have a warm cooked meal and just use your imagination. But his men was not so lucky. You see, they couldn't bring their wives all the way from Europe to Cape Town. They turned to tutu women, even to slave women. And that is one of the big reasons why we are the rainbow nation in South Africa. For the first mothers in South Africa was actually tutu women or slaves. So the first 5 years of Jan and his men staying here in Cape Town went past very quickly with no problems. Jan van Riebeeck's vegetable garden was fantastic. They bartered peacefully with the tutu people. And Jan van Riebeeck was still unhappy, for it was still a rough place. And he was dreaming each evening, to go back after 5 years to his beloved India. You see, the men that came all the way from the Netherlands to Cape Town with Jan van Riebeeck, they also had signed a 5-year contract with the VOC. So it was nearly time that their contracts were being renewed, or they were going to return back to the Netherlands. But at that stage, the company thought, Africa, that is not really a place for European. It is still too wild. So probably these men would like to come back to the Netherlands. Surprise, surprise. When it was time for them to renew their contracts, they approached Jan van Riebeeck and they told them, Jan, maak 'n plan. Jan, make a plan. Because we don't want to go back to the Netherlands. If we go back there, we don't even have wives, we don't have jobs, we are nothing. Rather give us a piece of land and we will start farming. Now that was where everything started to go wrong. Remember, the plan was not to colonize Africa. So Jan van Riebeeck wrote a letter to the Here 17 or the Lord 17, the company directors, and he said, you guys, the men don't want to go back all the way to the Netherlands. They want to stay on. They want to become vrije burgers, free citizens. You guys, I think it's a great idea, because if they work for themselves, they are not going to earn a salary from the VOC. The VOC directors wrote a letter back and they told Jan, still, we think it's a crazy idea, and why would people like to stay here in Africa? But if you grant them a piece of land and they are farmers, they had to sell their products to the VOC passing ships. So maybe they would work harder for themselves than they were working for the VOC. Grant them a piece of land. But was it really land that could be given to the people by Jan van Riebeeck if it was not really the VOC or Jan van Riebeeck's land? You see, this was the prime grazing ground for the cattle of the Tutu people. This area there were 9 farmers that were given land at first. This land was then up on Bishop's Court. Now, if you know South Africa, that is great soil against the mountain, Table Mountain, and above the sandy soil of the Cape Flats, and next to the Liesbeek River. Now, this is when all the problems started, and it was the first Dutch Tutu or Khoi wars that happened. If you stick around on this channel, I will later on tell you all about the Dutch Khoi wars, but not now. Let's focus on what happened to Jan van Riebeeck. Now, the Here 17 or the directors of the company had written another letter to old Jan van Riebeeck. When Jan van Riebeeck opened the letter, he was saddened. It stated, Hallo Jan, bedankt voor goeie werk als commandeur hier in de Kaap van Goede Hoop. Jij moet nog voor 5 jaartjes in de Kaap aanblijven. Jan, thank you very much for the great job that you did here in Cape Town. We think you will stay for another 5 years as commander in the Cape of Good Hope. Oh, Jan wasn't happy, but He served here another 5 years out here in the Cape of Good Hope. So in 1662, Jan van Riebeeck and Maria de la Quillerie could depart for the Indies. And that is where he had spent his rest of his life, in the Indies, being the commander until his death. Both he and Maria passed away in the Indies, and a copy of their gravestones were made and sent down to Cape Town. If you are really interested to see these copies, you go to the Ezekiel Museum, and they are mounted on one of the courtyard walls. That's in Adderley Street. Worthwhile seeing if you love history. Also walk down in Adderley Street, and there you would see old Jan van Riebeeck and Maria de la Quillerie's statues looking towards Table Mountain. So history lovers, we cannot change history. You see, in the Khoi point of view, grazing ground was for everybody. Land belonged to everybody. For the Europeans, the Dutch people, they arrived on no man's land, and they were used to giving out farms and farming for themselves. So there was a huge culture difference between the groups and religious differences. There were not really a racial difference. So today, we are the rainbow nation of South Africa, with some heritage of the Dutch, heritage of the Khoi people. So cheers to Jan, cheers to Altuman, and let's take hands and make this country a better place to live in. Now, history lovers, this was then the story behind the his-tory of Mr. Jan Anthoniszoon van Riebeeck. A complex character if you ask me. So join me for my next video next week Friday on more his story or her story or animal stories. Who knows what else? Cheers! Happy histouring around!